Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
This is Jumbo Commander, and I have an exciting video featuring Feline Ferocity from Commander 2017. I'm going to give you all of the details about this pre-constructed deck and give you some advice on how to upgrade it and whether you even want to invest your money in purchasing this type of deck. So let's dive right in and look at the feature commander, and that is Arahbo, Roar of the World. Look at that art. That's a majestic kitty cat. 3 green-white for a 5/5 legendary cat avatar, and it has a new keyword called Eminence. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if Arahbo Roar of the World is in the command zone or on the battlefield, another target cat you control gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Now this might seem like a minor effect, but the fact that this occurs from your command zone is really, really powerful. Let's take a look at Arahbo's second ability. Whenever another cat you control attacks, you may pay 1 green-white. If you do, it gains trample and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is its power. Man, this guy is all cats. The first ability only targets a cat. The second ability only works on cats. But they do kind of stack nicely. If you give a cat +3/+3 and then you double it up, that's a threatening kitty cat right there. But one thing this leads me down is that this has to be a tribal deck for Arahbo to synergize with your deck. So we needed to be really focused on cats because we want to eminence them and we want to be able to double their power to have them do a lot of damage. And actually both of these are very combat-centered abilities. So I guess the first thing we do is we just look for cats. Now, this deck is filled with cats, so right out of the box, you're going to be able to trigger Arahbo many times with really great cats. But there are a few key cats that are missing. I think some of the biggest opportunities for upgrades are in the 2 double striking cats, Adorned Pouncer and Skyhunter Skirmisher. And the reason why is Arahbo can pump them up into 4/4s, and if he's on the battlefield, double them to 8/8 double strikers. That's so much damage. And there's tons of equipment in this deck too to augment these double striking cats. There are also a few really solid cats that were not included in the precon. Regal Caracal is a limited all-star from Amonkhet. And I think everyone's pretty obviously thinking about Brimaz, King of Ereskos, which is a really strong cat that makes other cats. But you know what? You don't need me to just list a bunch of cats. I just wanted to throw a few out there. I want to get into the strategy of what can support Arahbo. I'd like to start off by saying they did a really good job about creating well-balanced decks. There's good amounts of ramp, there's some interaction, there's a bunch of great cats in this deck. This is a really playable deck just as it is. But I think if you want to hone in on Arahbo's abilities, I think you're going to need a lot of mana in addition to a lot of your cats. Arahbo's activated ability is not cheap, 1, a green, and a white. They have given us some hints about the mana requirements of Arahbo. They've given us the brand new card, Traverse the Outlands, which by the way works very well with a creature that pumps other cats and then doubles their power, letting you search up a ton of lands. It has me thinking of Boundless Realms, which also would go really well in a deck like this. Already included in the precon is Zendikar Resurgent, which is great, giving you huge amounts of mana and card draw. And also Mirari's Wake, which will pump your cats, making them more threatening in combat, but also giving you a lot of mana. This Arahbo deck will perform best if you can have a substantial board full of cats. Keep them on the board and have enough mana to make them big and tramply. I argue that the best cat that you can get for this deck is Chameleon Colossus. Technically a cat, Chameleon Colossus can get the Arahbo trigger, and then get the second Arahbo trigger, and then double himself. I'd also like to say, as long as we're going heavy on the cats, let's throw in a cat planeswalker, a Johnny, specifically Caller of the Pride, because he gives flying and double strike, and that's going to go really well with Arahbo's power pumping ability. I also think you need Beastmaster Ascension, just a card with a bunch of tigers on it, and even though Path to Exile has a cat being thrown into exile. It's still got a cat on it, so you definitely got to include that. All right, I gave you some hints about Arahbo Roar of the World, and that this is going to be a tribal deck. It has to be strong tribal, and it also has to deal with combat. See, there's a downside to this. Although this is super fun and flavorful and we're playing with cats, that's great. But if you're going for the most powerful effect, tribal, it limits you. You can only really use cats. If Arahbo's effect worked on anyone, maybe I'd want to throw in a Pathbreaker Ibex, where I could pump the Pathbreaker and then it would distribute its power to everyone. Or maybe I'd go for a single big creature and then double it up. But the cats are small, so Arahbo's activated ability doesn't really impact it. Well, maybe I might want to go in the double strike area. You know, I mentioned the Adorned Pouncer. I'd want to run a Silverblade Paladin. And yeah, you can, but he doesn't synergize with any of Arahbo's abilities. You can't pump him or double up his power. So you feel a little bit constrained when you're dealing just with cats. Also, another limitation of this deck is it's focused around the combat step. And combat can be really tricky because we expect it. It's kind of the normal thing of Commander. And so you're constantly running up against board wipes and single target removal and propaganda or ghostly prison effects. And it can be really hard to close out a game. Now, that doesn't mean you can't. These cats can get out of the gate fast and kill someone, and also be adorable and fluffy along the way. So there's a lot of draw to being cat tribal, but let's focus on a few of the other generals that might give us more opportunities to maybe tune our deck a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit more competitive. Unfortunately, we have to sacrifice a few cats to do that. Not literally let's go on to the next commander. Mirri, Weatherlight Duelist. 1 green-white for a 3/2 legendary cat warrior with first strike. And when Mirri, Weatherlight Duelist attacks, each opponent can't block with more than 1 creature this combat. As long as Mirri is tapped, no more than 1 creature can attack you each combat. These cats are aggressive. They really want to get into combat. And that's the same for Mirri. She wants to go sideways and kind of wants to bring her friends along too. When Mirri's attacking, then blocks are really, really difficult. And so if you can go wide, I mean, you kind of have a falter effect built into your commander. Falter, by the way, is an old school way of saying it hinders your opponent's ability to block your attacking creatures. Mirri reminds me of Archangel of Tides or Silent Arbiter. These are usually pretty powerful effects because they let you control the tempo of the game. And in fact, we can have more control over Mirri's tapped ability, because as long as she's tapped, no more than 1 creature can attack you each combat. That's pretty powerful. And so we can force her to be tapped with a card like Cultivator's Caravan. We can easily crew it with your Mirri without attacking, or a card like Survivor's Encampment and other similar effects can tap your commander on the battlefield and limit the amount of attacks that can come at you. And then when we decide to turn our mind to offense, well, we can flood the board, and then when we swing with Mirri, it becomes very hard for our opponents to block. The precon is already filled with a bunch of cards that let us ramp up to big mana costing spells. Traverse the Outlands, I mentioned Boundless Realms, which is not included, Zendikar Resurgent, and my favorite, Mirri's Wake, which lets you generate tons of mana, but also gives an Anthem effect. So when you go wide with a card like White Sun Zenith and make a bunch of cats, and then they can attack really effectively with Mirri's effect. If you want to go heavy on the cats, you can also play Waiting in the Weeds. That's a great cat token card. Okay, but the thing is, we don't need to be cats. We can expand other token strategies. A Sylvan Offering works really, really well. It's a very efficient way of deploying your threats, and Mirri prevents you from losing to the elves you give away. But even better has got to be Secure the Wastes. Get a bunch of mana, control the board with Mirri, and then Secure the Wastes, and then attack. And then your opponents are going to have a hard time blocking everything. And that's kind of the way this deck's going to play out. Instead of a combat-based general, it feels like a stall and ramp-based general. And then you swarm your opponents with evasion. That sounds like a play style that I can really get behind. I can see a lot of the cards that fit into it, and I can see this playing out really well at a lot of commander tables. I can't always see let's play cats and make them bigger and attack working. I can see something where we stall out the game, we ramp, and then we swarm with big effects. There have been a lot of other generals that do this very, very well, and I would even argue that Mirri could be a better token general than, say, Reese or other token commanders. Just saying. The next legendary creature from Feline Ferocity is Nazahn, Revered Bladesmith. 4 green-white for a 5/4 legendary cat artificer. When Nazahn enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment card. Reveal it. If you reveal a card named Hammer of Nazahn this way, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you may tap target creature defending player controls. I'm seeing this as an equipment Voltron commander because Nazahn fetches equipment. This has in my mind other equipment-based cards, Godo Bandit Warlord and Stoneforge Mystic. These are really powerful cards. They're really easily included in a lot of commander decks. Godo Mono Red Equipment is a very powerful deck. But now that I have Godo on my mind, I mean, doesn't Godo put the equipment into play no matter what? Nazahn just tutors it to your hand unless it's the Hammer of Nazahn. Godo also gives you a second combat step. Nazahn does tap down a creature, and I guess if you can get a lot of equipment on a lot of creatures, you can just tap down their whole board and get a big alpha strike. But I've got to say, Nazahn is looking solid, but not super impressive when compared to some other similar commanders. I wonder what this hammer does. The Hammer of Nazahn. 4 mana, and remember we can cheat that into play with this legendary commander. Whenever the Hammer of Nazahn or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. So the base stats are +2/+0 and indestructible. That's a pretty solid equipment, and the fact that you can attach it at one point in time for free because the equip cost of 4 is, well, it sucks. So things need to happen, but in an equipment deck, we might pay 4 mana for just this effect of equipment automatically attaches. You know, now that I'm looking at the hammer, I kind of feel like the hammer should go in Godo more than it goes in Nazahn, which is kind of depressing. But I mean, you fetch it up with Godo and then suddenly Godo's a 5/3 indestructible that has 2 combat steps. That sounds really, really good. But let's stick on Nazahn because we know that this is a great color combination to support the equipment Voltron deck. So looking at the hammer itself, it's a pretty solid effect in terms of just an artifact that lets you equip stuff. It reminds me of Sigarda's Aid, which is better and only costs 1 white, but man is it good. It turns your equipment into pump spells. It's just an amazing enchantment, and it kind of outshines the Hammer of Nazahn. So I'm a little bit hesitant on Nazahn's ability to be a Voltron commander. But he does have this great tutoring ability, so maybe he could be more of a toolbox equipment commander. Let me explain. Let's say you have a Soltari Visionary on the battlefield, not because you necessarily like him, but you want some enchantment removal. You realize he has Shadow and bang. Nazahn goes and gets a Quietus Spike, and suddenly you have the exact right equipment for the situation. Let's say you have a Solemn Simulacrum, and suddenly Nazahn goes and fetches a Blade of Selves, so suddenly you have the exact right equipment for the situation. Now, this could be combined with a lot of other equipment tutors, like the Stoneforge Mystic I mentioned, but also Steel Shaper's Gift or Quest for the Holy Relic. And so we have this pairing together of powerful equipment and creatures that can wield it really well. And if we do spread our equipment out on several different utility creatures, then Nazahn's other ability ends up being really effective, where we tap down defending opponents' creatures, letting us get through with cards like the Quietus Spike to deal damage, or other equipment that has a great effect when it hits someone. Think of every single Sword of. You know, you tap down something that could get in the way, and suddenly your Sword of Fire and Ice is drawing you cards and dealing damage. So I would make Nazahn more of an equipment toolbox with a minor Voltron strategy. where you have a bunch of creatures that are really great on their own, they hold equipment really well, and you have this equipment synergy, and then Nazahn sort of completes the package, letting you fetch exactly the equipment that you want at the right time, or using that other ability to falter your opponents, look at me using that word again, so that they have a hard time blocking really key attacks. And the reason I can't go full Voltron on Nazahn is because they came with a better Voltron commander, and that is Balan Wandering Knight. Balan is 2 white for a 3/3 legendary cat knight with first strike, and when Balan Wandering Knight has double strike as long as 2 or more equipments are attached to it. And for 1 and a white, attach all equipment you control to Balan. So let's compare Balan Wandering Knight to other Voltron commanders and see how he stacks up. Well, the first thing I want to compare him to is Rafik of the Many. Rafik gets all of his power from that double strike, and as we notice, Balan also has an ability to double strike. Now, I would argue that Rafik is powerful because it has a diversification of colors, and it is a 4/4, but Rafik lacks something that many of the best Voltron generals really need, in my opinion, and that's protection. That's why I often cite Sigarda as one of the best Voltron generals, because evasion and flying, hexproof, and prevents the sacrifice effects. So I personally think Sigarda is a really great Voltron commander, but I think Balan measures up quite well when it comes to protection. Let me explain. You're not going to play Balan on turn 4 because he's just going to be sitting out there not doing anything. I imagine Balan coming out way later in the game, maybe when you have 8 mana available. So let's imagine this scenario. Balan hits the battlefield and then you go to equip your Lightning Greaves. And then in many cases, your opponents are like, hold on, he's going to just start Voltroning up, and they'll point removal at Balan, or they'll try to do something to stop you. That's when you can, at instant speed, activate Balan's ability. 1 and a white, attach all equipment you control to him. And then your Lightning Greaves go on at instant speed. It's amazing protection. A card like Darksteel Plate can also give him some protection. But I would pump up his power, get cards like Luxodon Warhammer or Bloodforged Battle Axe, both of which are included in the precon, and just get his power up to be huge and then double strike someone to death. So Balan has the double strike to be as impactful as a Rafik, but this activated ability with the right equipment can give as much protection as a Sigarda. Man, this makes a Voltron equipment commander really, really enticing. And I don't think Balan has to be your single strategy where you do nothing but play equipment until you have 8 mana. I think you could be playing other creatures too. Think about Armory Automaton that can also wield a bunch of weapons. You can find other cards in the commander set that hold weapons really well too. How about have Kemba as a lieutenant, or another cat, Leonin Shikari, as a utility cat? I think that Balan could replace Nahiri the Lithomancer as my favorite equipment general. I'm really excited. But also, it plays really well in these equipment decks too. If you have a Nahiri deck, throw Balan in there as sort of a lieutenant. If you have a Kemba deck, sure, invite Balan to hang out too. So all of these commanders have sort of interchangeable equipment synergies that work really well together. The downside is that this is the least supported commander in this pre-constructed deck, mostly because it's mono white. You're gonna have to make a lot of tweaks to the deck to make sure to fill out its 100 cards. And some of the coolest equipment that you're gonna want is a little bit pricey, but I think that this is a commander well worth building. So what's my overall impression of Feline Ferocity from Commander 2017? Well, overall, I think it looks really fun. I like the idea of smashing face with cats. I like equipment synergies. And this deck has a lot of them, including a little package that lets you ramp to bigger mana spells. But I am a little bit concerned that so much of the strategy of this deck revolves around combat. Combat is really easily disrupted in Commander, and so if you don't like turning your creatures sideways, this cat deck might not be the best for you. But if you like kitty cats, if you like swarm strategies, you like big mana ramp, you like equipment, All of those things are combined together into Feline Ferocity, and I think it's going to be a very fun deck to play. My name is Jumbo Commander, and I make Commander content, and this is just one of 4 total Commander decks coming out very, very soon, and I will be reviewing them all, giving you guys some ideas on how to upgrade them, and maybe giving you some insight on which ones you want to buy. I'm also giving away a Brago King Eternal deck in a week. So if you click on the link and follow the directions in that video, you can win your very own Commander deck. All right, everyone, I'll see you really soon for more Commander 2017.